Welcome, bienvenidos. It's the Charlotte FC podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast where we dive into the personal side of things and people who make up Charlotte FC and around. Today we're going to go into the beautiful game through the lens of development, growth, and grit. Our guest is Bryan Scales, Executive Director of Charlotte FC's Academy, a guy who's been coaching the game for over 30 years, building from the ground up everywhere he's been, from Cornell to the New England Revolution, and now helping the next generation of pros here in the Carolinas. We'll talk about how it started, what keeps him passionate, the human side of coaching, and what it means to build a culture from scratch. It's time for the Charlotte FC podcast. Welcome, Bryan, to the podcast. We always have everybody start out the podcast by giving a quick elevator pitch. So introduce who you are, where you're from, what you do, and maybe any other highlights that might take a couple seconds as we're in an elevator going up and I'm learning about you.
Yeah, no problem. So Bryan Scales, Executive Director of Charlotte FC's Academy from Boston originally, hence the accent. And I spent 15 years as a college coach, 10 years as a Division I coach at Cornell University, spent 11 plus years as the Academy Director with the New England Revolution. I worked with the youth national teams for 3 years, and I've been down here since 2021, the last 3.5 years as the Academy Director here in Charlotte. So
cool.
It's fun.
So essentially you've been in this game for 30 years in this kind of thing. Where did it start for you, and what lit the fire about coaching and development for you?
Well, I'm a NASL baby, so I'm a product of I grew up in the 70s, in New England.
Diplomats.
That's right. Yes. So the Diplomats, the New England T-Men, the Cosmos, the Sting, that was when soccer really started to ramp up in this country, and I just fell in love with it when I was young and went to college, played Division I soccer at Hartwick College in upstate New York, and then right after that left, graduated, and went straight into coaching. So
you just knew you wanted to do coaching, or just like what?
Listen, my college coaches at Hartwick were pretty high up in coach education with U.S. Soccer. They were national team coaches. One of them played for the national team and captained the national team back in the 70s. So I felt like I got a really good education in the classroom and on the field there that I wanted to put to use. I didn't really know I wanted to get into coaching until I dove right into it after college. And just started, my coaching journey in 1991 at Plattsburgh State, and never looked back.
My father-in-law grew up in Plattsburgh.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Chilly.
Yeah, very chilly, definitely. But yeah, close to Montreal, where
that's right.
The team's playing this weekend.
That's right.
So was there something about coaching that you liked in particular in the development part? Because that's much different than other routes you could have taken.
Right. I think when you listen, the league wasn't around back then, so MLS was not even in existence. So I had to make the decision whether I wanted to continue to try to play professionally, which at that time was kind of little leagues, Portuguese league in Boston, USL. It wasn't, you didn't have MLS yet. So MLS came on the scene in 1996.
Yeah. The World Cup.
Yeah. So I wanted to start my career, and I knew if I got a head start in coaching that I would start gaining some valuable experience.
So. And back then, was there all the criteria and things that they have in place now to get coaching certifications and understanding? Was that already built in? It was just at a lower scale because we didn't have a Tier 1 league?
Yeah, so, listen, the history of the coaching courses with U.S. Soccer back in the 70s with Detmar Kramer coming over from Germany, and it was really, really difficult to get your U.S. Soccer A license. Like I said, the guys that I had as my coaches at Hartwick College were really high up in coach education. So, once I graduated from college, I went straight into the coaching education platform with then the NSCAA and then U.S. Soccer. Had the privilege of being one of the first graduates of the EFCL course that MLS and the French Football Federation started back in 2013. So those experiences have been great and have helped, really give new ideas and raise expectations as far as the coaching.
So did they guide you and say, hey, you need to take this course and this kind of thing, and you would go and do that? Be like, okay, now I have this ready. I want to coach this team type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get in, you're constantly trying to access new information and new ways of coaching, and how do you educate players, and there's so many different dynamics to it that you never stop learning. Mm-hmm. So there's a million different ways to develop players. There's a million different ways to play the game. So, I think it's really important for coach educators and coaches to be able to get out and see the way other teams do things and the way other coaches operate. Right. So you have to have an open mind and really be open to new ideas.
So being so new and fresh, but also eager to learn, what was your first big start? What was that like? Is there a story that happened?
Yeah, listen, going straight from Plattsburgh into the Ivy League, I was at Harvard for 2 years and then Cornell for 15 years. Mm-hmm. The experience of being a head coach inside a major college athletic department was really valuable. You're in essence a CEO of your own program. So from the recruiting to the budgeting to the fundraising to the on the field aspect to the technical part to the player management aspect, how do you manage a staff? How do you run a meeting? All of those things you learn very quickly when you're, the leader of your program. And you're learning a lot from, we had 36 other sports at Cornell. So, how do the hockey coaches work? How do the basketball coaches work? What do the field hockey coaches do? How do they put their training sessions together? What are they doing with the, player development and leadership? And, the one thing that really excites me to this day is being able to help a young player, young person develop, and achieve their potential, realize their potential. So that's really valuable stuff. It's like parenting. Yeah. So that's the guys that work here, the players that are involved in our program. We hope that we give our best to them every single day, and we've got some people that are really, really passionate about helping players, move along.
And then, like I said, everybody is not going to be just in anything, like you said, in parenting, they're not going to be at a certain level of things. Like everybody has their own path, and some it means, first team kind of stuff. Others it could even bigger global things, and others it might be like this was just a way that they grew up and learned, and maybe they still do that, but it's not a profession.
Yep.
So you probably have the whole gamut here.
Yeah, we do. I mean, first and foremost, our mission is to develop players that can play for the first team. So, ultimately, 99% of our players will go on and get scholarships and play at college, which is great, really important for their development as people and as players. But obviously, this structure is set up to elicit professional players for the very top 1%. And, it's never linear. It goes ups and downs. Mm-hmm. It's messy at times. It's, there's failure is baked into the process and challenge. Yeah. And so helping players and coaches and everyone involved here develop the resilience that they need to deal with those challenges over time that's an important part of what we do.
Wow. So would there be any other, because we've talked a lot about you just knew this was kind of your thing. Was there any other career pathway that you were like, oh, I could do this? Or was it always just I'm going to figure out a way to always be involved in soccer? Yeah.
I mean, listen, if I wasn't going to be a pilot or a rock star and play guitar in a band, soccer was...
Do you still play?
I do. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Is there an underground band that we don't know about here?
Not yet. I'm not ready to go on tour yet, but we'll see. Maybe in a few years.
Okay.
So, but football's always been a big passion of mine, and to be able to develop players has been a real interest.
So you're part of this kind of coaching pedigree where you've learned a lot, and I'm sure that helped you get jobs at D1 schools, Ivy League, and stuff like that, without having someone that might have to go through so many ranks of teaching and being a part of the youth. But you did that for almost, I guess you said 15 years, Cornell for like 11 or something.
Yep.
What was the major pivot that made you go to New England? And what pulled you there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So ultimately, my experience at Cornell was terrific. It was what a great experience for me as a person and as a coach. But ultimately, I felt like I wasn't on the field doing what I loved, which was training players enough. Mm-hmm. The Ivy League, the college game, as you know, is pretty abbreviated. You got your 3 months in the fall, and then you have some off season mm-hmm. matches that you have in the spring. But I didn't feel like I was training players and coaching as much as I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And so when the opportunity in New England came up, and MLS had just started their academy initiative in 2008, wow. I was doing work for U.S. Soccer with the national teams and scouting for the national teams. And I felt like, okay, now I can be on the field, 200 plus days a year, really working with players and helping to develop, top level kids.
Makes sense. And also there's just your people you're developing is such a larger scale, not just for the academy, but just thinking like when you're at Cornell, of course we didn't have an NIL back then. So you're like, right. There was only certain players you could even recruit. There was only certain players that you could have. And that probably limited like what you could do, plus with the shortened season. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yep.
So during your time at the Revolution, was there a moment that you kind of hit that like, hey, this is exactly where you wanted to be and were kind of meant to be in that process?
Yeah, because we grew from basically at the time it was a construction project, much like this project mm-hmm. here, where we had 2 teams to start, and then we ended up, we had ultimately 5 teams. Residency program, education program, mental performance program. Like we were really able to put some really good pieces together. And, mm-hmm. A couple years into my tenure in New England, we signed our first player, Diego Fagundes, who was at the time 15 years old.
Yeah. Now,
Diego's still playing. He plays for the LA Galaxy now. Mm-hmm. And he's been in the league for, 10 plus years. And, I think he's 70 goals, 70 assists. So little Diego Fagundes was just the start of a number of players that came through that academy that continue to play to this day. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You can see that.
Yeah, it was great.
You see the path. And I'm sure you probably keep up with other players too that you've interacted with yep. and helping them out.
It's fun to watch their journey. There's a team up in the USL Championship now, Rhode Island FC, mm-hmm. that just started last year that made it to the final. Of the USL Championship. And Kano Smith, who's the head coach and general manager, and Carl Spratt both worked for us, that worked together in the academy in New England. And they have probably 5 to 7 guys from New England's academy that played for us that made an impact for their team last year. So everybody's path and journey is a little different. So to see those guys making an impact at the professional level is pretty cool.
That's cool. And it's so great that the professional level is just not one level, because people can have a professional career in soccer or do both things and kind of follow both paths, or like you said, take the college route and still make it through based on stuff you're doing.
That's it.
You've helped shape a lot of careers, sign pro contracts and land D1 scholarships. What's the story, maybe a story from that journey that kind of sticks with you? Is there a particular, I know you mentioned earlier about the LA Galaxy, but
yeah, I would say what you learn as a youth developer, the tendency I think for people to want to be certain about players at a young age, to say they can or can't make it, or they will make it, they won't make it,
like a sure thing.
Yeah, that humans want certainty, and so as you get older and more experienced, and you kind of see thousands and thousands of players, that the kids develop at different rates. And so, that kid that you didn't think was going to make it at 15 years old could well be playing for a top club at some point when he's 25. He was a late developer, you know? So I always try to hedge my judgments, as we move along, and we have a saying about deciding slowly here. to let kids really kind of grow and develop, because it's like I said before, it's never linear. So those kids who are late developers, the little guys that have to fight their way through adversity, that maybe a coach or two, kind of gave up on or didn't pick, those players, to see them develop and have success as they, enter their 20s is really, really, it's pretty cool to see. So I've always felt like, we're here to help these players move along, and we don't want to make snap judgments on them too early. So, and I've learned that over time, because I've certainly made enough mistakes in my career where you've made a decision on a kid that you probably shouldn't have at the time.
What do you feel like maybe is your biggest or most changing evolution in this process as you've been taking on these different roles?
I think that I became a different coach and manager when I had my own kids. Now my kids are in their mid-20s. I have 3 of them.
Heard that a lot.
Yes.
It changes the way you think about everything.
Yes. And so when I saw my own kids go through their development process, as I was continuing to develop as a coach, it was really, really valuable to have that perspective. And I just think, listen, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. So the first 10 years, you think you have all the answers. The second 10 years, you're like, oh, okay, there's other ways to do things, and you get good experience. And then the third 10 years, you really start doing some good work because you've got experience and perspective and hopefully a little humbleness to be able to bring with you.
So why Charlotte FC? Did Charlotte FC come calling, or you kind of put your name out and said, hey, I'd like to be part of this startup?
Yeah, listen, I came down here because I did think that it was a really interesting project, and it was a startup, which I think one of my strengths is helping to build a good culture. And in the academy here, we have a really strong culture with the staff and the players. It's easier, I think, or it's a little bit more malleable to be able to do that than to go into a club that already has a specific culture, whether it's good or bad, and help affect it.
Yeah.
So that was the main reason. The startup analogy is a good one.
Did you need to have a change from where you were, or were you content?
I was let go in New England when they had a new group of a new staff came in. So the perils of professional football. So it happens, and you move on to the next project. So,
gotcha. So you were out there searching.
Yeah.
Like, what could I be a part of?
For sure. Yeah. What's the right environment for me, and what can I add to? What can I help with?
So how did you know this was the right place?
I didn't until I came down here, and we had a lot of good people involved here, and so the plans from Zoran and ownership, and we've had a lot of things that we've done along the way, adding different things, different pieces here and there. We've had a few, missteps as well, and as you would as a startup.
Yeah.
But I just felt like this region specifically has never had a professional academy, and its player production track record is relatively low. There's only probably a couple players, Eddie Pope and, Gianluca Busio, that have come out of the Carolinas.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge for us. Can we, as a professional academy, can we get the structure right? Can we get the environment right? Can we get the people right to really affect what the player production model looks like in the Carolinas? And, we're 4 years into this, and you're starting to see some of the residual effects of that.
Do you feel like the talent was there, or it just wasn't the pipeline to get them there?
Yeah.
Because, I've grown up in this area for the last 20 years and seen all these different academies of course not of professional rank, but like soccer's huge. Like there's a lot going on here and a lot of good quality play, but there was never that track to be like, hey, if you do this, this is where you can go.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, there's so many clubs and players playing down here, the climate year round. What it needed was, in my opinion, a structured pathway with the resources to be able to find players, put them on the right pathway, be able to get them into a professional environment with our second team, and then ultimately with our first team that would, prepare them for that next level.
Right.
Because that in New England we had that, the Revolution were an original club in MLS. So
Right.
like I said, when the league started in 2008, the Academy initiative, the mission was to to grow our own vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some areas around the country have really good players that they took advantage of that. Southern California, Dallas, DMV, New York, New Jersey, and then other areas, needed to really push to be relevant.
Right. Right. So we were talking a little bit off air for this. Tell me a little bit about how the players, because I think you mentioned about 85% of the players who are on the academy now are from this area, kind of considered the homegrown, but you can get other players. Can you tell the listeners more about how you all access and get players and how that works? Yeah.
So it's a little bit like college recruiting. And so, our homegrown territory of North Carolina and South Carolina, that's our backyard. So we have to protect our backyard first. So we have to make sure that, we see these players, we see them in their environment, we watch games on the weekends, we follow up on contacts and leads and watch video. We have a whole scouting department that takes care of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, once we feel like, okay, we've got a really good handle on our territory, we're also looking in other territories for players that we think have high potential. So like you and I had spoken about, we've got players from Sacramento, players from Dallas, players from Miami, players from Virginia that we feel fit into what we're trying to do here and that we think we can develop their potential.
And the reason you can get those players is because they weren't protected by the clubs where they're homegrown.
Correct.
Okay. And the same thing is you can only protect so many. Is there a number?
That's right. We can protect 45 players.
Per age group?
No, total.
Total?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there could be a lot of potential out there.
Of course.
Wow.
Of course. So, that's why it's so critical for us. We have a residency program here where kids come and they live and they're here all day in our day stay program. Mm-hmm. They go to school here. They're on the field. We feed them. They're,
right.
Training, IDPs, individual development plans, all of that stuff has helped accelerate the growth and the development of each
how's
player.
that paid for? Like, what is the agreement? Like, how do they come into the contract, and what are they looking at and saying, this is what we get and this is what the club gets from you being here?
Well, the players don't pay anything.
Okay.
So that's all from ownership. And so ownership's made this investment so that we can develop these players and develop players of value and assets for the club. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, we develop a player and then Bayern Munich comes in and says, well, we really like this guy, that's a good thing for us. Right. So then you're generating revenue by the players that you're developing.
Right.
So
your investment is still being carried off.
It's the global market.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then parents or people who are the guardians of them are trusting you as a club and
yes.
How do you get that buy-in? Because I know there's a lot of ambitious people out there, but also it's kind of like, it's a risk for them.
Yeah. Listen, it is a risk because there's some sacrifice involved because it's our programming goes 10 plus months a year. Mm-hmm. And that, it doesn't include if you're in with the second team or the first team during the off season and breaks right. and all that stuff. But you're right. Our first responsibility is to the welfare of our players. And so we have to take care of these players so that we're preparing them for the next level, but mm-hmm. that we understand that these are kids still. And so, yes, there's not a lot of time for them to go to prom or to go to the movies or to hang out with their buddies on Friday and Saturday night. And mm-hmm. there's obviously sacrifices that are involved, that just the amount of travel that we have.
Right. At such an early age too.
At an early age is really significant. So we have to do a really good job of helping to educate the players on the field, off the field. They're getting some really good experiences. They're right. traveling around. We were in France this year with our U16s. We just got back from Montreal. We'll be in Bradenton, Florida on mm-hmm. Saturday for a big event. Like these guys they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But
that's part of the experience.
It's part of the experience. They have to love it. They have to have a passion for it, because if they don't, and they're a high potential player, it doesn't usually work out in the end.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to mention some people who work at the organization, and can you kind of connect the dots on how you specifically in the academy works with them?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll start off with, Zorn. He's at the top. So what is his connection to you directly, and like what do you all meet and talk with on a regular basis about?
Yeah, so Z is really the rudder of the boat, and he provides the direction and the leadership and the vision for where we want to go as a club. And Z's a former agent. He knows the global marketplace. Mm-hmm. He knows how valuable an academy can be, and in developing players for the first team and being able to sell those assets overseas. So yeah, Z's the head of the ship right now. He's moving us in the right direction, and the first team is doing great. So yeah. it's that really starts to trickle down to the rest of the club.
And then also in the reverse too, right? If you're doing the academy right, then that means next pro is doing right.
Yep.
And that means first team eventually after years.
Correct. Yeah. So you'll see these numbers on the board here. The ability for academy developed players to make an impact with the second team, which is really our mission, to get them into that environment, and the second team has to prepare them for the first team environment.
Right.
Has doubled in 1 year. So,
wow.
We've gone from 3,200 minutes in 2023 to over 7,000 minutes in 2024. And now we're 3 games into the season at 33, right. 1,300 minutes. So, not to mention Aaron John's impact with the second team coming right out of the academy as a
right.
top 11 MLS Next Pro player. These are all big events, or these are all big moments for the academy.
Right.
And it takes time to develop players. It's not a process, as I like to say, you can't microwave this process. You have to cook it, and cooking takes time. So, but you're starting to really see the results of that as we move forward.
Do you feel like with Zorn kind of, like you said, leading it, do you feel like since he has that, not only the Asian background, but also just the European background and what those academies are like, that's pretty much mirroring what this place is doing?
Yeah, you can't really cut and paste a European academy into an American academy. Mm-hmm. But some of the principles and the vision and the ideas 100% will translate. You're dealing here with a different culture. So you're dealing with a multi-sport culture in the United States.
Right. You're
dealing with huge time and space issues in the United States. So those are challenges that you're trying to address, while capturing and harnessing the American, like we can do anything. Americans, right. We win. We can do anything. So taking that, right. and really kind of harnessing that and enhancing that is a real bonus for us.
Yeah.
So, and I think when you see, now you're starting to see players that go overseas and that are making impacts at big professional clubs in Europe. A lot of their managers will say, yeah, the American guys that come in, they compete. Like they will go. They're not afraid of anything. So I think those are real great assets and traits and characteristics that we want to enhance here for our players.
All right. What about Tommy Wilson?
Yeah, so Tommy and I have known each other for a long time. He was with the Scottish FA when I first met him as the U19 coach, and he was also involved in coach education. Then he went to Rangers, and then he went to Philadelphia Union when Philly started their academy.
Right.
And he helped develop Philly's academy to one of the top academies in MLS.
Right.
And so to have him down here as another person to really help push the youth development side of things has been really valuable.
So for your kind of relationship with him, what does he give to the academy? And then what are you getting kind of back? Well, he's looking over the technical aspect of it.
Tommy's job is to connect first team, second team, and the academy, kind of align that pathway. And so, what's valuable with Tommy is, we've both been in the same positions. He knows what it looks like and feels like to be an academy director, the ups and downs, the player pathway, some of the constraints and challenges that you inevitably face along the way. So, we can anticipate when those things are going to start to happen. And then he's been able to use his experience to help align that player pathway for us. So yeah, it's been really helpful.
And then as far as you have a team of coaches, you have a team of scouts, all these people that are working directly under you, how do you manage that? Because there's so many different directions and you have to keep them aligned, but you also have to do what's best for those players and those coaches to be leaders.
Right.
So what are you doing with them on a weekly basis?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you've got, I have to stay connected and kind of align all of the different departments in the academy. So scouting, performance, technical, player welfare, operations. What do we have? We've got a whole group of, we got 6-7 departments here in the academy that I need to be present. I need to be communicating with them. I need to be on the field with the guys. I need to be in the office with everybody when it comes to, okay, what's our plan here? Mm-hmm. Just to make sure that, number one, that they're all valued, all the people that run those different departments, and that they're communicating with each other, and that we're making decisions that will benefit the players first and foremost. And it's a long season, so we're here with each other probably more than we are with our families, and it's critically important that I make good decisions when it comes to the type of people that we have in the building.
So you're talking about making those decisions and collaborating on them. Is there any player development or decision that you made that even here or in the past that you're like really proud of, like the collective of what you all do? Do you have a story from that?
It happens every week. There's always moments where, for instance, so this past weekend, we went to Montreal. Mm-hmm. So from an operations standpoint, trains, planes, and automobiles, making sure that the buses are on time, making sure that we're ready for the flights, the meals are on time. The medical department is working to make sure that players are fit and taken care of so that they can compete at their best. The performance staff is tracking all of the GPS metrics and all of the performance data for the players so that they can perform at their best. Mm-hmm. From all of the little details to go up and play in an academy game, not just in Montreal where you're going over the border. Mm-hmm. The weather's usually terrible when we go to Montreal. You deal with a lot of different variables.
Right.
It's always a proud moment for me when I see all of our entire team working together to set the players up for success. And they don't get a lot of notoriety with this stuff because we are working behind the scenes. We're not the first team. We're not the second team. Right. But we are putting in the hours each and every day to help these players realize their potential. And that takes a village. Like, it just takes all of the different departments to really be investing all that they can do to get these players to their best.
And every time you're able to pull off something like that, that's a huge win because you're like, we can do this again.
Yeah.
We can do this, and we build on it.
Yep. And listen, that's the standard. The staff know that. Right. The players know that they're expected to do their job, but they're also expected to do their job well. Mm-hmm. And so, when we go to the GA Cup on Saturday, we're going to be in Bradenton with 2 teams for 10 days, 9 days, 7 games, dealing with results, dealing with scouting, dealing with injuries, dealing with meals, dealing with college scouts, national team scouts. Mm-hmm. Our staff will be down there. Tommy will be down there. Bobby may be down there. Like, right. Everybody will be interested to see how we rise to the occasion. And, our staff love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
How much is data? We've talked a lot about your history, and how much has data now been such a big part of what you do and how you scout, how you train, how you help them perform, how you take them to that next level?
It's the new frontier, right? So as a baseball guy, the sabermetrics and Billy Bean,
Yeah.
and that won my Boston Red Sox a World Series in 2004.
Right.
And so it's relatively new in football, but I think it's really, really important. It's important because, yes, you have to use your eyes. You have to know football a little bit to be able to help develop the players, and there's certainly that aspect to it. But from a scouting perspective, from a performance perspective, how we look at games, how we analyze games, how do we measure success, the data part comes into it every time. And then, you have those discussions about, okay, what does this mean? Do we dismiss it? Is it valuable? Does it inform what we want to do next? But yeah, it's really important.
Do you think it's changed the way you've approached things, and do you think it's been for the better?
Yes, I do, because I think that it gives us some evidence when we watch a game to be able to go, oh, okay, this, how many line splitting passes, or did we get behind the opponent enough times? Right. We lost the game 1-0, but boy, we entered the box 17 times. We had 6 shots on goal. So a ball hits the post and goes in. Maybe we're having a different conversation about whether everyone's disappointed about the game or not.
Right.
So it just gives us a little bit more it gives us more evidence to be able to inform our decisions on players and how we play.
Right. All right. Couple questions here to end.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part about your current role?
The hardest part about my role is always releasing players, young players, bar none. Like those conversations, like we invest so much time and energy into developing these kids, and they invest a ton of time. Their parents invest a ton of time. So when you have to let a player go because you don't feel like they're going to get enough playing time, that's always difficult.
Because they would be better served in another place where they might get it.
Yep.
So it's almost, you feel like you're helping them, but it's helping you promote these other players who you feel might be better geared.
Listen, it's the reality of a professional academy is that not everybody gets to come back. And so you just want to make sure that that those conversations that's done with empathy and an open mind, because you never know. We've had players that we've released to other clubs that we've watched and continued to track, and then we've brought them back into the pathway, and they're still with us.
Yeah. What interests or things do you have for future work?
For me?
Yeah, for you.
Well, first and foremost, we're trying to get more players into the second team and into the first team. So,
that's your metric.
That's, the winning and the losing on the weekend, yes, the coaches care, the players care, we all care about that stuff. But ultimately, are those numbers on the board continuing to go up? Are we getting guys into that second team environment? Are they making an impact on the field? Does Dean have interest in some of these players? Nimfasha has made his debut already.
Right.
When that happens, it's a really proud moment for the academy. Right. So we just have to keep going. It doesn't. It's an infinite game. Like you're constantly just going. So for me right now, this has been a really interesting project, but who knows what happens in the future.
It's stoppage time.
A favorite or a unique personal ritual?
I have to go for a run every single day or walk every single day just to clear my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of getting off site and getting away, like that's important for me.
I'm sure the weather helps here.
Yes, it does.
In New England.
Yes, it does.
Is there a stadium or an event you haven't been to that you want to experience for a match or something?
I would love to see a Boca River game in Argentina. Ooh. Yeah, I've seen a lot of games overseas, but I haven't been into a game at the Chocolate Box. So,
cool. Do you have a favorite unplugged activity besides going for your walks and kind of airing out?
Yes, that would be going home and playing guitar, whether it's an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar with the amp cranked up really loud, or an acoustic guitar out, behind my house. That's a good cleansing ritual for me.
You're gonna have to record one and send it out.
I know.
People will be interested.
I know.
Make a little song or something about them. Make a song.
That's a good idea, actually.
Do you have a go-to snack?
Go-to snack?
Maybe you're watching a match. You're sitting there scouting. You're like, oh, I need to munch on something.
Not really. Not really. Okay. No.
What design impresses you more, interior or exterior?
What design?
Yeah. Do you like the interior of things, not just physical things, but
yes,
mental things, or are you more like on the exterior?
100% interior. Okay. Yep.
Do you find starting a project or finishing one more gratifying?
Finishing.
Yeah. Well, like this.
Yeah.
This is a project.
Finishing.
It's a process, but when you see those numbers, like, yes, that's a good finish.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody can start a project, but finishing a project is that's pretty rewarding.
All right. What recharges you when you need to like get away? Like because I know your season really never ends.
Yeah.
But
yeah, my wife and I, we love to travel.
Yeah.
So, going to different countries and traveling around the United States, as I said, my kids are older now, so we usually travel together at times, but yeah, just kind of getting away and listening to some good music and having a bourbon or an IPA or something is really important for us.
All right, last question. If you played in today's MLS, what position would you play and what type of player would you resemble?
I would probably be a slow, relatively technical right-sided center back that can hit a big diagonal, but really doesn't want to play 60 yards from his goal and chase guys down as they're running in one-on-one against the keeper.
So who do you see out there that plays like that?
Oh, boy. Who do I see out there that plays like that? The modern game doesn't usually have that type of player. So
you need a little
yes. I think the way the game has gone now, it's so athletic and teams are playing so high up the field for the most part that you have to really find guys that are comfortable with all that space behind. And when you look at Adilson Malanda, that's who I'd like to be someday, maybe.
Yeah.
And his impact with the first team and Andrew Privet and Tim Ream and all those guys, like they've got a big job to do.
Yeah, that's huge.
But I always look at the back four first. Those are my guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Bryan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Great.
Thanks for listening, everybody. That was Bryan Scales, and what a journey from a kid growing up watching NASL matches in New England to helping lead Charlotte FC's academy into its next chapter. Bryan's story is a reminder that development, whether it's in sport or life, is rarely linear, often messy, but always meaningful. Big thanks to Bryan for sharing his insights, stories, and heart with us today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you follow, rate, and share. And as always, thanks for listening. Until next time, enjoy the day.